Well, hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Ashwin Kumar, and here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. Stocks recover after an early sell-off. Sensex gains over 300 points. Nifty gains nearly 100 points. Bank stocks rally, but mid-caps underperform. Israel says it attacked 600 targets in Gaza in a day. Israeli defense forces say that they were moving ahead as per plan in the Gaza Strip, claim to have struck Syria and Lebanon in response to launches from those areas into Israel. Thousands of Gaza residents break into UN warehouses for supplies. Relief for Puneet Goenka. The Securities Appellate Tribunal sets aside the SEBI order that had barred him from holding key managerial positions in Zee entities, including the merged Zee-Sony entity. However, SEBI will be continuing its probe against Goenka in the fund diversion case. NCLAT's judicial member Rakesh Kumar resigns on facing contempt proceedings in the Finolex cables case at the Supreme Court. The court notes that the conduct of the member gave the impression that he has an ego. Accepts technical member's apology. The court observes that the scrutinizer withheld the results of the September 29th AGM to benefit Deepak Chhabria, imposes a penalty of 1 crore rupees on Chhabria and 10 lakh rupees on the scrutinizer. The central government submits a statement in the Electoral Bonds case a day ahead of the hearings, tells the Supreme Court that the citizens have no right to know the source of political parties' funding, says right to know must be subjected to reasonable restrictions. The centre says that the Electoral Bonds scheme does not impinge upon any existing right of any person. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar says that he has met the families of 8 Navy veterans who have been handed the death penalty in Qatar, say that the government will continue to make all efforts to secure their release, adds that they attach the highest importance to this case. At least 14 people, including 2 locomotive pilots, are dead and over 50 injured after 2 passenger trains collide in Andhra Pradesh. Rescue operations and track restoration work is underway. Several trains remain cancelled. 3 people are dead in multiple blasts that rocked Jehovah's Witness gathering in Kerala's Ernakulam district on Sunday. Investigators believe 4 improvised explosive devices were used. A man who left Jehovah's Witness 6 years ago has claimed responsibility. An all-party meeting chaired by the Kerala Chief Minister calls for unity against attempts to spread hatred. Apple's India revenue nears 50,000 crore rupees in FY23, clocking a growth of 48%. Annual profits surged by 76%, the fastest rate of growth in 5 years. US President Joe Biden issues a landmark executive order on managing the risks of artificial intelligence. The executive order directs for new standards for AI safety and security, as well as protecting privacy of citizens. Well, let's start with the day's market action. Sensex gained over 300 points and the Nifty gains nearly 100 points as stocks recovered from an early sell-off. Now, the Nifty dropped below the 19,000 level a few minutes after the opening bell. But since then, we saw a steady pullback led largely by blue chips, bank stocks and Reliance Industries. Now, mid-caps underperformed today with the index clocking marginal gains. And well, in the earnings corner, HSBC missed analysts' expectations despite reporting a surge of over 200% in profit after tax for the third quarter. The company's revenue rose to over $7 billion and will net interest margin saw a marginal increase. Now, the bank's board approved a share buyback of up to $3 billion, which is expected to be completed by February of 2024. And well, back home, shares of AU Small Finance Bank fell in trade after the Jaipur-based bank announced the merger with Fincare Small Finance Bank. Now, as per the terms of this deal, AU Small Finance will issue 1 share of the bank for every 3.45 shares of Fincare's shareholders. Now, the completion of the transaction is subject to approval from regulators and a capital infusion of 700 crore rupees by Fincare's SFB's promoters. Meanwhile, Apple India's business witnessed a robust growth in FY23 with revenue clocking growth of 48%. The company also recorded a massive rise in net profit, surging 76% to more than 2,200 crore rupees. This is the fastest growth rate in net profit Apple has seen in the last 5 years. And while staying with the world of tech, US President Joe Biden has issued a landmark executive order on managing the risks of artificial intelligence. The executive order directs for new standards for AI safety and security, as well as protecting privacy of citizens. The move will compel tech companies to share AI safety test results. CNBC's Eamon Javers is joining us now with more.
This is an extraordinarily wide-ranging executive order that we're seeing out of the White House today. It's directing just about every federal agency to regulate and shape the growth of AI in an effort to protect the public, the economy, and national security. President Biden's power is limited here to the executive branch, but remember, with Congress unable to or unlikely to be able to produce any new laws until next year, if at all, this is likely to be the most aggressive piece of American regulation over this fast-growing new industry for some time. Among the safety measures the White House is announcing here, Biden will require developers of the most powerful AI systems to share their safety test results with the U.S. government. The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology will set, quote, rigorous standards for extensive red team testing to ensure safety before public release of AI products. In an effort to limit deepfakes and misinformation, the Department of Commerce will develop guidance for content authentication and watermarking to clearly label AI-generated content and to prevent AI-fueled leaps in cyber attacks. The administration says it will use AI tools to develop and find and fix vulnerabilities in critical software. There's also an effort here to stop unintentional AI-based discrimination. And in a nod to concerns that AI could be on the brink of eliminating millions of jobs, Biden is directing his administration to write a report on AI's potential labor
on to the
market.
big global story. Gaza Health Ministry has claimed that the death toll among Palestinians has crossed 8,000, of which half are children. In Israel, the death toll is more than 1,400. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces have expanded their military offensive. They claim to have struck 600 targets in Gaza in 24 hours. The targets included areas near Al-Azhar University, from where IDF said an anti-tank missile was about to be launched. Weapons warehouses belonging to Hamas were targeted as well. Israel also raided the Jenin refugee camp in West Bank, killing at least 2 Palestinians. As per reports, heavy bombardment was also witnessed around Al-Quds hospital, where over 10,000 Palestinians have sought refuge. Several residential buildings around the hospital have either collapsed or suffered damage. Yesterday, around 33 aid trucks carrying humanitarian aid reached Gaza from Egypt's Rafah border, the largest since the conflict began. Thousands of Gaza residents broke into the UN warehouses to get hold of essential items. The United Nations Security Council will be meeting today to discuss the Israel-Hamas war and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Well, in national headlines now, at least 14 persons have died and several injured in a rail accident in Andhra Pradesh's district. The accident occurred after 2 passenger trains collided on the Howrah-Chennai line overnight. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy has announced an ex gratia amount of 10 lakh rupees each for the kin of those deceased. This comes just months after 3 trains collided in Odisha, killing over 280 people in the month of June this year. Well, 3 people were killed and several hospitalized after a series of bomb blasts at a Jehovah's Witness congregation in Kerala's Ernakulam district. An individual called Dominic Martin has claimed responsibility for the blast. He left Jehovah's Witness 6 years ago and claims to have been enraged at their teachings. Investigations are currently underway to verify his claims. Kerala's Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan convened an all-party meeting where calls were made for unity against attempts to spread hatred. An External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, met the families of 8 former Navy men who were sentenced to death in Qatar. Posting on social media platform X, he said that India will continue to make all efforts to secure their release. He also said that the government has attached the highest importance to this case. Well, the centre has undertaken the PMKSAN saturation drive after farmers complained of not being included under the scheme. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that 7 states are covered under this drive for now, and that the centre will scale it up after the state elections are finished. Sapna Das joins us now with more details. Sapna, tell us, what are your sources telling you?
First of all, the aim of the central government is twofold. That is basically better targeting of benefits under PM-KISAN, and also to have a more verified database which can be used as a farmer registry in the times to come. Having said that, pilot projects have been started in 7 states to onboard as many beneficiaries under PM-KISAN as possible, especially those farmers who are land owning. In the recent past, the central government has received feedback and grievances from a lot of farmers who have not been included in the scheme or have got excluded due to some reason or the other. So now there's a PM-KISAN mobile app that has been designed by the central government, and that's going to be actively used by the state governments to do a paperless enrollment of potential farmers under the PM-KISAN scheme. In the recent past also, because of the cleaning up of the PM-KISAN database, the number of farmers has actually come down from around 10.75, 11 crore farmers. The number is now down to 8.75 crore. And the universe that the central government has in mind is to reach at least 9.5 crore farmers who are at least land owning. So keeping that in mind, this saturation drive is underway, and after the state polls, most likely the central government will make it nationwide.
Well, with that, it's time now for a very short break. But coming up, a day ahead of the hearings, government gives its statement on electoral bonds, tells the Supreme Court that citizens have no right to know the source of political parties' funding. A discussion with former Chief Election Commissioner T.S. Krishnamurthy when we come back. Welcome back. You're watching CNBC-TV18. This is Court Corner. Now, the Supreme Court dismissed Delhi Deputy Chief Minister and senior Aam Aadmi Party leader Manish Sisodia's bail application in the Delhi liquor excise policy case. Now, the top court has said that a money trail of 338 crore rupees has tentatively been established. The court ordered the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate to complete the probe within 6 to 8 months, added that Sisodia may move for bail if the probe does not adhere to this deadline. Sisodia has been lodged in prison since 26th of February of this year. From Mumbai now, the Securities Appellate Tribunal has set aside the SEBI order that barred Puneet Goenka from holding key managerial posts in Zee entities. This included the merged Zee Sony entity as well. However, the market regulator will continue its probe against Goenka in the fund diversion case. Yash Jain now joins us with more details. Yash, take us through the order, what it means and what is the way forward from here.
Well, Ashmit, the direction from the Securities Appellate Tribunal or SAT today is a much-needed breather for Puneet Goenka and, more importantly, for his position at the merged entity between Zee Entertainment and Sony. The Securities Appellate Tribunal in its direction today has set aside or quashed market regulator SEBI's restraining order against Puneet Goenka. Remember, SEBI had passed a restricting order against Puneet Goenka, which sort of, stopped him from taking the position of managing director and CEO at the merged entity between Zee Entertainment and Sony. This order clearly means 2 important things. The first one is that now Puneet Goenka will be free to take that position of MD and CEO at the merged entity. Also, what the SAT has directed SEBI is to continue with its investigation in this particular matter, which is around fund diversion and siphoning of funds against Puneet Goenka as well as Subhash Chandra. Puneet Goenka has also been directed to coordinate with the market regulator SEBI as far as this investigation is concerned. Now, what became the problem in this particular matter is the time period which was sought by market regulator SEBI for this investigation. In the previous hearing, SEBI had told the court, that is SAT, that they will take about 8 months to complete the investigation, and that really became the sticking point where Puneet Goenka's counsel argued that it's too long for someone to be out of office when the allegations are not even established. That resonated well with the Securities Appellate Tribunal, and hence this order in favor of Puneet Goenka.
Yash, thanks a lot for that. Let's move ahead now. The NCLAT's judicial member Rakesh Kumar has resigned on facing contempt proceedings in the Finolex cable succession case in Supreme Court. The court pardoned members of the NCLAT for defying its order. However, it held that the members willfully defied its order by pronouncing their verdict in this case. The court also observed that the scrutinizer withheld the results of the company's AGM on September 29th to benefit former chairman Deepak Chhabria. It has imposed a penalty of 1 crore rupees on Chhabria and 10 lakh rupees on the scrutinizer. Well, here's the big case scheduled for tomorrow. The Electoral Bonds case. The Attorney General has submitted an affidavit before the Supreme Court. The Attorney General, in fact, has told the Supreme Court that citizens have no right to know the source of political parties' funding. It has further said that the right to know must be subjected to reasonable restrictions, finally noting that the Electoral Bond scheme does not impinge upon any existing right of any person. And to take this discussion forward, I'm now joined by the former Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy. Mr. Krishnamurthy, thank you so much for joining us, for taking our time. First question, it is accepted wisdom, it is an widely accepted position that the independence of whether we talk about institutions or professions or whether we talk about judges, regulators, all of that independence is very closely linked to who is paying them, and therefore a need is felt for disclosure. In such a scenario where political parties try to stake claim to collective wisdom and aspirations, can they be the exceptions?
Well, as far as I am concerned, the political parties are public bodies, and transactions by political parties should be transparent. As far as the electoral funding is concerned, the scheme of electoral bond brought about a few years back only talks about channelizing the donations through the banks, but not the information relating to the donor. Public bodies like political parties should be more transparent in the transactions. And if the electoral bonds is an improvement according to the government, I'm afraid it is not adequate, because people should know whether person who is donating is influencing government policies or not. Now, the problem is that the present system of funding is as bad as the electoral bonds as well, because the public have a right to know how much is contributed by each person, whether there is any nexus between the donor and the donee. So I have suggested a further improvement on this by way of National Election Fund, where the money is not given by the donors to the political parties, but is channelized through an independent agency like National Election Fund, which can be administered by the Election Commission in consultation with all political parties. In which case, people will know who is, at least people will know the corporates are not influencing policy decisions.
Sure. Important points there, Mr. Krishnamurthy. We'll come to that one by one. First, let's talk about the people's right to know. That has been answered in the negative by the Attorney General of the country. The Attorney General seems to have argued, seems to have submitted before the Apex Court that there is no right to know. Now, the legalities aside, of course, a 5-judge constitution bench will be looking at the legality of it all. But simply on the merits of this argument, as a voter, can you and I, is it reasonable for a voter such as you and I to seek clarity from the political party as to who is funding you so as I can make an informed decision? Is that a reasonable expectation, a reasonable right of the voter?
I have no hesitation in saying that the voter is entitled to know. Whether the political parties are willing to disclose it or not is the issue. The issue is the donor should be known, for the voter to know whether I'm voting a party which is receiving donation from a corporate or any other donor who is going to influence the policy decision. So as a voter, I will always insist on total transparency by the donor. If you are not able to give that kind of a transparency, it is better to channelize the entire amount through a National Election Fund.
Sure. Let me take that up then and raise one of the concerns that has been pointed out by the petitioners in this case. One of the concerns has been is that given as how only the SBI issues these electoral bonds, and that the SBI, the promoter shareholder, of course, is the government in this case, therefore there is an undue advantage that the government of the day has with respect to electoral funding. Is that a fair assessment, that the government of the day may have undue benefits, given that it's only the SBI that's issuing electoral bonds, only they know who's funding which party?
That may be the normal inference, but even giving the benefit of doubt to the government that they are not aware of what is happening in State Bank, which is a collector of these funds. My larger issue is, if you want to keep the quality of democracy absolutely pure, it is necessary to disclose who gives funds to political parties. I have no doubts about that.
Understood. Let's then talk about the alternative that you've presented. The argument that the government often makes in defense of the electoral bonds is that, look, the alternative is quite bleak. At least under this system, we have tax-paid money, that is white money in bank accounts that is being funneled towards political parties. At least it is not black money. That's the concern that the government raises. Is there an alternative to this? You've talked about a national electoral trust. What will be the way forward if not the electoral bonds?
How do you say it's the white money that is coming into the bank? You do not know who is the donor. How do you say that it is?
That's the government's assertion.
White money. I know it's what the government says, but as a voter, I'm asking: am I not entitled to know who gives the money? I have an interest in the quality of democracy in this country. To make it more and more transparent, that is my request. That is my appeal. So as far as the alternative method is concerned, it takes away the obnoxious nexus between the donor and the donee. It is the election commission which will administer this fund in consultation with all the political parties. Now, many of the, for example, TV allotment timings, etc., the public TV channels, the allotment is given by the election commission. Similarly, it is possible. I do agree there are some difficulties in that, but it is possible to find a solution about the utilization of the collection of the fund and the utilization of the fund in a manner that is acceptable to major national and regional parties.
Mr. Krishnamurthy, what you're suggesting is a wholesale reform of this electoral funding process. Who would you trust? How would you take this process of reform forward? The AG's assessment seems to be that, look, save it for the parliament. It is a case of parliamentary debate. Let us decide how to take this forward. That's the best course of action. Or can there be a case made for judicial intervention?
Now, as far as the legal issues are concerned, although I'm a law student myself, I don't think I'm competent to answer, as qualified judges will decide ultimately. But my personal view is that the voter should know all information about political funding. If you cannot provide that, please make it through a national election fund. Because ultimately, today somebody is in power, tomorrow somebody else will be in power. Are they going to use these provisions for their own benefit? This is the question that a voter will ask. So you have to provide an enduring solution to the problem. Yeah.
Right, Mr. Krishnamurthy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective. Important points these, and similar concerns have been raised before the Apex Court as well. Tomorrow, we understand a 5-judge bench headed by the Chief Justice himself will deliberate, will start hearing this issue. The expectation is that the Supreme Court may look to give some clarity ahead of the upcoming general elections. But that, unfortunately, is all the time that we have. It's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. The news and updates continue on the other side.